wavetables.lol. That's wavetables.lol, home of Liminal Space 2, the haunted digital reverb synthesizer. So about 2 weeks ago, I introduced Liminal Space 2 in a video that at that time mentioned that this was still only available for Windows, like the original version of Liminal Space. But that changed very quickly. Like just a couple days after I introduced Liminal Space 2 and did a deep dive video on it, I got it working on Mac thanks to the help from a few friends, including our friend of the channel, Seth Watson, over at Fine Increments, who helped me package it for Mac the right way. And then I was able to just get it all set up so that I could do Mac builds using GitHub actions. Blah, 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 techie, 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 talky, talky. Like and subscribe for more talky synthesizer content. So Liminal Space 2 is a digital reverb that's unabashedly digital. It owes a lot of its heritage to things like the Alesis reverbs from the 80s and a little inspiration from the Lexicon 224. Drink time. And it's a very interesting sounding reverb that has really wild modulation possibilities. And I hadn't showed patches like this. This is called Lost Highway. That sounds really beautiful on guitar. I'm playing the Contact Electric Sunburst guitar instrument here. I am not a guitarist. I'm barely even a keyboard player. Let's bypass it and hear the dry signal. So that's just the raw stuff coming out of Contact, where I've changed this built-in effects to not have reverb. And here's with Liminal Space 2 on it. You can hear that kind of beautiful chorus tail that if I did play guitar, I think this would be a really fun patch to play live guitar through. So we're going to talk about some of the new changes to Liminal Space 2. Release Candidate 3 version is now out. Again, supports Mac and Windows, CLAP, and VST3. On the Macintosh side, you've got CLAP, VST3, and audio units, so Logic users can enjoy it. Basically everything but AAX, which I don't know that I'll ever do. I don't know if I support Pro Tools and how they do things, okay? But hey, if you want a Pro Tools version, let me know. Maybe I'll reconsider. There's a lot of changes in this update. In addition to fully supporting all of the 3 most common Macintosh formats, John Skippy Lemcool from Plugin Guru took a look at the plugin on his live stream about 2 weeks ago and highly recommended its sound, but did recommend some GUI changes. So in this new version, there's a thing down here that you can dismiss if you want to. Colloquially, in my head canon, I refer to this as the easy panel, and it gives you access to like all the typical things that you want, like, mix control that should always be present, right? So we can adjust our mix here. Can I do this at the same time? Can I mouse and play my keyboard at the same time? It's a little hard in my current setup. Okay, so it's got that. You got a bypass control that's always available. Turn it on and off. You can adjust the filter. This is the filter that's the FIR filter going into the reverb. So we can make things a lot darker or brighten them back up. And then we've got our regeneration and our scale parameters always visible. So we can shorten the reverb using scale or regen. We'll talk about the differences there. We can make it super long. Wow, 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 wow. So that's like always available to you now. And there's also a quick and dirty nav control. So if we want to go to the top, where we already are, we can do that, or we can get down to our mod LFOs. We can get to our tone control section here with Lexitone, pitch shift, and Shimmer. We've got an output with some new features. The Release Candidate 2 did not have gate and nonlinear functions, but we've got those now, and we'll talk about them. Or you can get down to the utility section, which is where saving and stuff is. And I just realized we're looking at this is my special authoring version of Liminal Space 2. some of these options are not available to you in the normal paid or demo build. Did I mention there's a demo? There's a time-limited demo that's completely free that you can get at wavetables.lol. There we go. Wavetables.lol. There's Liminal Space. Liminal Space is just $10 and well worth it. And then the free demo, which is like a 20-minute time demo that's save disabled, but otherwise is fully functional, is right here. Go and get it. There'll be links in the description. There's always links in the description. Let's see. Let's move on to some other things. So another thing that you'll notice about this new version of Liminal Space 2 is that the original version came with more than 2,000 algorithms. Now, an algorithm in Liminal Space is really just the layout of the delay lines that feed the reverb. And we didn't know in previous versions, like exactly what the RT60 times were for the various algorithms. And we also didn't have an easy way to know what they were going to sound like before we tried them out. So I took the time to profile all of the algorithms that are included in Liminal Space, both the original 2000 and a new set of 2000 that we'll talk about more, so that we can see their characteristics. So for example, you can see that the Lost Highway preset here is using algorithms an algorithm from the Plate 1 bank that originally came with Liminal Space. And you can see that its RT60 is 22.2 seconds at regen 50 and stretch 100. So if we I'm holding down Control, and I'm going to click on regen and scale. And so now this algorithm is playing at its like nominal size, right? And so its RT60 is about 22.2 seconds. In the readout in the easy panel here, it's showing us 28.6. I don't know why that's a little longer. There must be something else I'm doing that it understands. Anyway, you can see that now I've got these little chips here, and we can see that this algorithm is defined as dark. It's stereo wide. It has a slow reverb onset, and it's textured versus being smooth or echoic. So if I wanted to just try other algorithms here with this preset, I could select like dark. I'm going to, lock that to dark, and let's lock it to textured. And now I can see that I've got 71 matches that are filtered in this list. Out of, I think there's, if we don't have those on, there's 128 in here? Yeah, so there's 128 total. And we'll just go to dark and textured. And now there's 71. And so I can just like flip through these and try different ones. And these will all have slightly different characters. Like that one has a little slower rise time. Let's like restore our actual preset. Boy, I'm a sucky guitar player. So that's a completely new thing. The other thing is that I'm shipping a whole bunch of new algorithms with the plugin, and these are all under the ZZ Lab section. So it's called Lab because some of them are experimental. It's my little laboratory for developing new algorithms. But you get them all, and there's a whole bunch of new categories. We'll talk about some of those. But you can see that I can just go to any of these, and again, they're profiled, and I can select let's say an echoic one from this category, Haunted V2. That rises very slowly. We could put our regen back at 50, which is nominally where this reverb is supposed to go, and then we could shift its scale down, turn its scale down. And now it's a lot shorter. But it still has a lot of the same characteristics. We should talk about lock really quick, which has been in the plugin for a while. But if you're on a preset and you want to change algorithms, but you want to keep the reverb length like as close as possible to the original preset, you can turn on lock, and then as we navigate to new algorithms, that's going to hold our shift and scale parameters. Regen does not change when you do this. And so you can try different ones out this way. So that's a fun thing you can do. That's what the lock feature does. There's also a lock on output, by the way, which I probably need to move into the easy panel as well. For the output mix, if you just always want to hold it here at our current setting of 24, we can click lock right there. And then as long as we're in the same as long as, actually, even if we change presets, you'll see that mix does not change. Okay, so talky, blah, blah, blah. Let's get into some of the other cool things that have been included with Liminal Space 2. So one thing that Liminal Space has always been good at are these long, modulated, like very effecty effect reverbs, right? Like the init patch, or not the init patch, the welcome patch. You know, it's got real shimmer and then like delay modulation, diffusion modulation going on. But I wanted to make it more generally useful for like shorter reverbs and things like that. And so a lot of the new collections of algorithms in the RC3 version and later are about short reverb. And so there's a bunch of new archetypes. Again, archetypes are sort of like presets. They're like complete starting places for you to program your own ideas. And I developed some new techniques for getting our algorithms to target exact RT60 times. So if you're not familiar with RT60, like that's the time it takes the reverb to decay 60 dB from its max. Boy, I'm Poppy. Why does this always happen? So we have, for example, the ZZ Labs Short Room Regen 25 collection, and these are reverbs that are designed to have an RT60 of just half a second, so 0.5 seconds. And to do that, actually, I had to target lower regens. The default regeneration in this reverb is 50%, but a lot of these new room algorithms, there are short, medium, and long ones, they target a regen of 25%, so that the delay lines can be shorter, and you know we don't overrun our target RT60. So here's this room small 0.5 seconds. I'll bypass it. So there's the dry signal. And there it is on. And they're really natural sounding. I was pretty proud of how these came out. One thing that's kind of neat about these is that, like this archetype, it's not using any of the fancy stuff. It's not using the delay mod or diffusion matrix or the tone controls or shimmer. It's just the pure sound of the reverb tank with a highly optimized algorithm for making short rooms. And so in this particular collection, they all really have the same characteristics. They're all bright, they're all fast in terms of their reverb onset, and they're all smooth. They're not textured, they're not echoey. There is some variation in the stereo balance. So there are wide ones, for example, and you might hear a little bit stereo stuff going on. We'll flip through a few. Oh, that one was neat. That one's real bright. If we wanted to darken a reverb like this, right, we could just take our filter down. That's like the most primitive way to do it. That's kind of nice. Or we could take it really dark. And, you know, if we want to make this a little bit longer so that we can hear what's going on, we could move our regen out like that. Let's put our filter all the way back up. Not going to change this back to about 25%, which is where it wants to go. Another cool feature is this thing called tail guide. So while we're talking about the shorts, like how would we turn a short reverb into a long one, and know how long it is? Well, the tail guide helps you adjust either regen or size to hit a target length. So for example, if I hit tail guide here, you see the first option is keep size, but change the regen. And now I could go down here, and if I want to turn this into a chamber, I can just click right here, and you'll see it's going to change my regen to 53%. And now you see my RT60 is 2 seconds. Now, because these particular algorithms are designed to be short, we're going to hear like a little bit of slapbacky stuff. But it's still pretty nice. And there are, of course, algorithms designed for getting to longer times. But this is kind of cool. Like we could change this into a vast reverb, right? Interesting, right? Let's go back here to our room small. Okay. So that's a small one. We've got some other variations here. There's a medium, so there's a whole set of 1 second reverbs. And again, this particular archetype is really just using the pure reverb tank. We could, of course, add some diffusion to it if we want to. We could turn that on. So let's see, do both. And it's going to get a little more diffuse. That's a pretty nice sound right there. Let's try to select a wide algorithm with medium rooms, and we'll just flip through a few. What's 102 sound like? Bypass it. I mean, these are pretty convincing. Let's try a couple more. That one's a little darker. You have to listen really carefully. You'll just get all sorts of different options. Some of them are going to have like more fluctuations in the room. Some are going to be smoother. But broadly speaking, everything in this category is smooth. Quit talking, Keith. No, I won't quit talking. There are 3 varieties of stereo. So there's the wide, which means that there's more likely to be stereo stuff going on. There's balanced. These ones sound kind of nicely ambient. Moving on, there's also an archetype for a large room, and these are designed to be 1.5 seconds at regen 25. So now I've got a reverb where, it's a little bit longer. It's like a, little more diffuse sounding. Got the same kind of set of options. Let's look at the wide ones. I mean, I don't know. It sounds pretty good to me. Faffing around. These algorithms, it's one more set here. So there's a large room that now we add a little bit of diffusion to it. That sounds real nice. What about some of the other variations here? Let's go with our balanced ones. And these are getting long enough now that tricks like our delay modulation could work pretty well. We'll go to delay mod and we'll turn on delay mod modulation with its built-in wavetable. I'll turn my depth way up so you can hear what this does. Here we're getting that kind of seasick chorusing. Let's move the rate of this up a little bit. And then we'll turn our depth down. And so now we've got just kind of a pleasing little chorus. I've showed this in previous videos, but there's mute and solo buttons, so I could mute the delay mod. I have to go up higher. So there's delay mod off, and here it is on. You can hear just that very subtle chorus in there. Turn the depth up a little bit. Kind of like a honky-tonk piano now, huh? And that might be too much for us, but those are the kind of things you can do there. Now, one of the reasons that I did these like shorter reverb algorithms is to make this more useful with things like vocals. Now, I don't have a really great acapella to demo a vocal today. I really need to get my hands on one. But in this project, I've just got these. I want to make sure my reverb is bypassed. I've just got these little vocal riffs. These are like old Ensoniq samples or something.
Yay, yeah.
Okay, like super cheese stuff, right?
Yay, yeah.
Sing it, girl.
Oh, yay, baby, yay.
Baby, yeah. Okay, so let's turn the reverb on. So here is an archetype called Intimate Escher Space. This is using another collection. These are shorter rooms. These are designed for an RT60 of 1.2 seconds at regen 25. And so you can see in this patch, I do have delay mod and matrix modulation on here. Let me drag this out, Keith. Make this a little bigger. Do, 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 do. All right, let's listen to how this sounds.
Yay, yeah.
It's pretty sweet.
Yay, yeah. Oh, yay, baby, yay. Ooh, oh.
Ooh, whoa. So I want to show one other thing. So we looked at the room small, right? So this is just kind of the pure tank. I keep thinking there's a synth on here. Huh.
Yay,
Like this is a reverb that's like barely there. It's just like ambience.
yay, yeah.
And we can get all sorts of different effects, right? By switching the algorithm. Like that one's a little more fluttery.
Yay, yeah.
And this one's wide. You can actually immediately hear that it is wider.
Oh, yay, baby, yay.
And here's one of the narrow ones. So that's really cool. But there's also nonlinearity in the release candidate tree version of Liminal Space. So there's another archetype here called room small plus shadow. And now listen to how subtly different this is.
Yay, yeah. Yay, yeah. Oh, yay.
You hear how there's it's not really longer, but there's like a subtail going on in the reverb. So it's like the overall reverb decays, with an RT60 of about half a second. But it then continues a little bit. And that's being done down here. Let's go to the output section where we've got this new gate nonlinear module. And so this does two things. So one, this lets us go fully 80s and do gated reverbs, which we'll look at next. But this one slider for decay geometry goes from this thing called collapse, which is a gate, through to its default, which is linear, and then up into this range called shadow. So let's just, if I turn this to linear and we listen to this, we won't have any of that shadow reverb going on. Play for me.
Yay, yeah.
But now as I move shadow up, I'm going to move it way up so we can really hear it. We're going to get that sort of phantom tail.
Yay, yeah.
I'll switch it off real quick.
Yay, yeah.
And now back on.
Oh, yay, baby, yay. Ooh,
And I think that's just a really pleasant effect. There's also this decay curve. So when we're in collapse mode, the gated mode, this actually controls from like an exponential gate to a more logarithmic gate that like holds for a while and then shuts down. When we're in the shadow mode, what this does is to the left, it emphasizes more the core delays. And when it's to the right, it's more of the longer tail, long delays. So let's just listen to this. We'll turn shadow all the way up.
yay, yeah.
Turn it off.
Yay, yeah.
Now it's back on.
Oh, yay,
And
baby,
we can move it to the hard
yay.
direction, and it's just a slightly different sound, where it's
Yay,
accenting the late body more.
yay, yeah.
So there's just a lot of cool things that you can do with that. I think this would be very effective for just ambient reverbs, either on vocals or backing vocals. It also work on piano, right? We can go back over to our piano. By the way, the piano I'm using here is just the Piano Uno patch from Contact. It's just like a built-in, like, it's not like the world's most deeply sampled. It's not the world's most deeply multi-sampled piano, but it gives you a good idea. So we could let's go back. Let's change this back to there we go, the small plus shadow. And again, just to compare that to the short without the shadow, we can go down here and we could turn it off. It's very short. But then we turn the nonlinearity back on. And I just like that little extra ring. That's also not too fluttery. Anyway, that's pretty cool. Let's move on to gates. Yeah, so now you can do gated reverb effects right in Liminal Space. So we are playing the G-Force's Icon drum, which is an emulation of, Lin-style drum machines. And we've got a gated reverb patch here. Let's shut that off. Let's bypass it. So that's just our raw drum sound. And this is a new preset that uses the collapse/gate function called Scritty Gate. So I was kind of thinking of like the remix of Scritty Politi's Would Be's has a gate sound that's kind of like this to me. There's some other variations. Here's a Prince style gate. And this is very satisfying to play. Whoop, wrong octave. And then, of course, the gated reverbs work really well on snares, but also on toms with that off. That's kind of flabby, right? Dum, 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 dum. There we go. 80s that up. So how this is done is, down here in the output section, we could also navigate there by going output. It's the gate nonlinear. And you'll see that we've got our collapse moved into the, toward the left of the slider here. If we take this all the way, this will be like a complete gate that closes down, like 100% down. And then the decay curve goes from an exponential slope, which is a quick drop, and then it asymptotically approaches zero, up to like, there's a setting called balanced, which is at 50%. If we hit control and click it, we'll just be at the balance setting. Now it's a linear decay. And we can also go up here into the hard is a logarithmic decay, where the envelope holds and then shuts off really quickly. So we can let it ring out like almost, up to the full reverb, or we can like just cut it off real quick. So it makes it really easy to do gated type of sounds. And you can make it so that it doesn't shut the gate all the way, but it goes mostly. Like here, we're going to hear the reverb ring out. Let's change our regen up higher. And you hear I got a little bit of that 5-second tail still there, or I can shut it all the way down. Now, of course, you would probably put this on like either just the snare channel or like the snare and the toms. If you do have if you've got it on your bass notes too, you're going to like re-trigger the gate. But that's an effect that was sometimes used as well. I kind of like this on these bongo sounds. Anyway, that's the gate. Now we can do other things with that gate control. I left that section too early. You will note that there is a dedicated modulator here for collapse destination. So if I've got a gate set up, right? If I'm in collapse mode, I now have a place where I can send that modulation curve. So, we're already computing that either exponential or logarithmic curve. So I was like, hey, we could use that as a modulation source. And so we can send that to almost anything. One of the most interesting things to send that to is demonstrated by this patch. I'm being such a spaz. It's drink time. I'm sorry. This is a patch called Derez Pitch Gate. Now, from my previous videos that Derez basically undersamples the reverb and ends up changing its pitch. So this patch, you can see here in the little modulation routing that's set up. You've got this C, that's collapse, so that's the collapse envelope. It's controlling Derez. And so as the gate closes, Derez goes down, and so the pitch drops. So it's instant syntoms, right? Oops, I want to tell a guy, I just want to bypass you. Sorry, bypass. Right, we go from da-dum, da-dum, da-dum to do-do, do-do, do-do. Kind of neat effects, and you could route that to all the other standard modulation destinations. Another thing we can do, let's go back over to our piano. You note that, there's not just, activate your audio engine, Keith. We don't have to close the gate all the way down. We could just have modulation that closes the gate a little bit. And that can be very interesting in a longer kind of patch. All right, so let's go let's see, there's a new factory preset that's called taped reverb. Here, I'm going to put there's two modes here. I've got this default sort order for the factory presets, or you can go A through Z, which will make it easier to find this guy. I want this called taped. Taped verb. So in the taped verb, you can see I've got Derez again, and we've got it routed. We've got collapse routed, okay? But down here, we're not collapsing all the way. See, we're only going collapse of like 61%, and we've got our decay curve just mildly hard. And I'm sending the collapse envelope, the collapse destination, to Derez amount, right? And so now I've got a reverb that does this. So just one of the many weird effects that you can do with liminal space. There's another variation on that as well. Where is that guy? Let's go sort you this way. Oh, nostalgia doesn't do that. Oh, lighten up. So here's a reverb that modulates in the other direction so that when it stops, the Derez rises gently. And of course, there are many different ways that we can get this kind of pitch modulation, but this is in liminal space, but this is using the Derez and the collapse feature. You might notice there's also little badges on things now. So when Derez is being modulated by its built-in wavetable control, you'll see that we do a little, like I guess you'd call a sparkline of the modulation so that we can see it's there. So even if I'm in another module, I can see that the Derez modulation is on, and it has approximately this shape. As I manipulate this waveform, you'll see that we get a different sparkline. That's kind of fun. I thought that was a cute feature. Same thing with like delay mod and everywhere else that has its own wavetable LFO. If we turn delay mod on here, now I've got a cute little sine wave there. And as we modulate it up to its triangle wave, so this has both that Derez pitch rise and then this like chorus effect, right? That's really pretty, actually. I'm just out here congratulating myself. Hooray, me! Hey, like and subscribe for more talky synthesizer content. There are in the RC3 build here a bunch of new presets and new archetypes, as I showed. Go ahead and like explore those. These go from just the more traditional liminal space things like longer modulated reverbs, to really weird things. This is another weird thing that's using the collapse functionality. You see, it triggers at like really kind of weird times. So it's a little bit like some of the stuff that Eventide Black Hole can do, even though I'm not trying to. I don't know if that one's musically useful, but I thought it demonstrated an interesting property. What else do we have here? Oh, so here's a real dark hall. That's kind of neat. Another thing that we could do with this, let's illustrate tail guide again. So you'll see that the RT60 on this is about 1.8 seconds, but I would actually think a hall is more like 4 seconds, right? So we could use the tail guide to quickly get us into that 4-second range. So I'll just use keep size, change regen, and set it to hall 4 seconds. And voila, I've got a 4-second hall type reverb that still pretty much sounds like the preset. Let's see, what else is in here? Long, low rumble. Very dark. Has low frequencies that just ring out. This is being done, you can see there's a very long reverb setup here. I've got regen very high, and I've got scale very high on one of the short room algorithms. So I'm taking a short room and I'm stretching it to be a very, very long, almost like infinite reverb. And then in the tone section, let's go down to tone. I've got Lexitone on here, and so Lexitone is my tone shaping that's inspired by the Lexicon 224. And you'll see that we've got our treble frequency like way down. We're letting our basses ring out a little longer. I could make them infinite, like that's not cropped at all. And now the low frequencies are going to ring very, very long. But we're taking our mids down. We could turn our mids back up and we could turn our bass all the way down. So for a completely different kind of tonal effect. And this the filter in Lexitone works independently of the main filter control. There are just many, many different types of tonal effects that you can get as well. Pull rooms, caustics. So there, you can do glitchy effects too. So this illustrates it. If you listen closely in the background, it sometimes sounds like there's a weird voice that comes in. Chitter, chitter, chatter. You can examine these presets to see how this all works. And you see there's a lot of different modulation going on. Let's see, what else we got here? Another gate program, Work Cloud. Kind of a longer, darker, a bloom style reverb, brilliant. There are these interesting, this is sort of an aborted experiment, but that's why it's in the lab section. So I did this whole collection called Cathedral Grand, and the Cathedral Grands are very long reverbs that are pretty echoey. There are, of course, cathedrals in the Legacy collection as well, but these are kind of neat. We just select a different one at random. Fat fingers. And you can hear all that pitch modulation that we're doing, right? Let's see, we did the verb ones. This is a nice patch on piano. It's called Nostalgia. I'm not going to go through all of these. This one's nice because it sounds like it's through a little speaker. Anyway, feel free to explore those. Again, Liminal Space 2 is just $10. There's a free demo. You can try all this stuff out. You can explore programming it yourself. Of course, there are infinite-ish reverbs. You see this patch called Stasis Field. It has a nominal regen time of like 300 seconds. And it uses Derez. So just make this would be really great for ambient music, right? There's my whole album. I like those kind of patches. They're fun. Oh, there is a bank of malformed algorithms. I actually make these with sort of machine learning techniques. We use like a genetic algorithm that can evaluate within the space of several hours, like more than 6 million possible reverb layouts. But because of that, it can sometimes get stuck on a different idea, and it thought that that these plates would be good plates, but they're a little malformed in that their very shortest like delay time is very long. It's like you can see it's actually like 777 samples in, and so these all came out echoey, and I just left them in here I might do a more well-formed bank. Obviously, this would maybe be something you'd want to tempo sync to the dot transport, but this one's just a delay. And so all of the plate haunted V1 are like this. Let's turn on lock and try some other ones. Like really weird, like sort of tape style effects, right? There, that's a freebie that's fun for you. Of course, the Liminal Space 2 is really great at effecty types of patches, and so here's one with some pretty strange modulations going on. Like in Derez, you've got this upside down shark fin type waveform. It's also using that haunted plate, those kind of malformed algorithms. See, upside down. Oh, this one's nice. Here we're using Derez to accentuate like the aliasing effect that Derez can give you. And so there's this breathy tone to this reverb. Hence its name, Exhale. Now, when you do hear sand like this in when you're using Derez, there is a control I don't think I talked about that was not in the original Liminal Space. And this thing called sand reduction. It's a dedicated anti-aliasing filter. If I turn this all the way off, we'll hear even more of that sandy, breathy sound. Which is cool in itself, and we just embrace that as part of the reverb. But if I want to minimize that, I can turn the slider way up, and this becomes a very aggressive, I think it's 4 poles, a filter that's well below Nyquist. So now this sound is a lot smoother. There's less of that aliasing hiss that gets into the reverb. But I like it slightly accentuated. All right, that's a little talk about sand reduction. There are other... This patch called Dissonant Tomb, you kind of need a different source from this piano to hear it. But it actually gets pitch shifty in kind of a dissonant way, and that's being done in the tone section in pitch shift. We've got all these different modes. There's the legacy pitch shift mode that happens in the tank and can kind of progressively warp the pitch up and down. But there's also these other modes, and one of the most useful ones is Doppler pair, which has a very interesting like chorusy effect. And I've retuned it in this version to be a little more extreme. If we let's try soloing this. So you hear how it goes, if I turn depth way up, we'll hear it more. And one thing I actually like with this particular mode is that if you change the pitch shift mix to be like 50%-ish or so, it creates like a really nice chorusing effect. As we've got a little bit of the pitch shift like beating against the regular sound of the reverb. That's a classic Liminal Space kind of sound. It's scary effects, right? They're in the ductwork. And as you can hear, that's using like a negative shimmer, right? So we've got shimmer tuned down by an octave, and the fine is being modulated. So we get a weird, dark, deep shimmer. There's another patch in here that's worth examining. Ill Winds does a similar thing. You hear that like that kind of reverse reverb kind of effect? That's being done with the shimmer. So here in the shimmer section, we've got kind of, an atonal interval here. You've got like 11 semitones. And then see the amount, it's going from very low to very high. And so so what we're doing is we're taking our dedicated wavetable and we are targeting amount. And I've got this exponential saw wavetable in here. And so this goes from a sawtooth wave to an exponential ramp sawtooth. And so when we modulate amount that way, we're going to hear this swoop in every now and then. Drip, drip, drip. So all sorts of weird outside of the box ideas you can do. I like that. Anything else worth looking at here? Well, they're all worth listening to. Here's another one that's a little bit glitchy. I design your eyes. Hear that little chitter chatter that happens. Anyway, lots of neat stuff to play with. Did I get to everything that I wanted to talk about today with Liminal Space 2? Anyway, this is a nice upgrade. There are, so we've got, the tail guide, we've got the profiling on everything. That's really helpful. I find myself using those features all the time, and it's just really helpful to be able to see like what the nominal RT60 is of things, right? Like, so this is a very long reverb at 9 seconds, and then I can just easily change it down. Like the other thing you'll notice, right, is that, so the reason I had to do this profiling is that these controls, it's not actually linear. Like you might think that one reverb algorithm, well, if we just doubled regen, wouldn't that double the length of it? It turns out it doesn't. It's highly dependent upon how the delays are actually laid out. So that's why I had to do this profiling. But it's very cool how you can independently adjust these to hit target times. Like this will be much longer. And now this is anything but a normal reverb, but now we're way out of things that we can use tail guide on. Let's go here. So see if I change regen and scale down, now I've kind of arbitrarily gone to 4.2 seconds here. But if I wanted to like lock this in to like an exact time, I could do this. So now I can put this at exactly 4 seconds using the Hall switch here. Or if I want to double that, which I call vast, I could do that. Okay, I guess that's about everything for today. Hey, go get Liminal Space 2. It's at www.wavetables.lol. Again, it's just $10, or there's a free version. Go get it. Let me know your experience with it. There are a couple of GUI bugs that I have noticed in this version. Those will be resolved in release candidate 4, which will probably also have a bunch of new archetypes and presets for you to play with. And I'm interested in your presets. So do save your user presets. That's down here. You go to utility, you can save user preset. Send me ones that are interesting to you, and maybe they'll make it into the factory library. That's it for today. Be good to each other, have fun making music, and I will talk to you later.